Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Faerie Conclave. This is episode 115. I'm your host, Alec. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm super excited to be joined by an extra special guest. It's Maeve. How are you doing today, Maeve?
Oh, hi. I'm doing pretty good. It's a day.
Yeah, it's a nice, early weekend time, which hanging out with friends and chatting about magic in the morning on the weekend is the ideal way for me to start the day. So thank you for this.
Yeah, it's the best way to start.
Agreed. I love it. And okay, so to introduce you a little bit, which I feel like this backstory is kind of funny. I met you in the pool at a weird penthouse party at MagicCon Vegas. And
that is how we met.
Which was kind of awesome, actually. And I feel like we just got along really well immediately and had a great time. And then the next day at MagicCon Vegas, we met up and went on a bunch of side quests all around because I feel like we both had all these little tasks we had to do before. And it was the last day of the convention, so we had all these little things we had to do, and we just ran around doing all these side quests. And that was really fun.
It was.
So thank you for that. I had a great time, and I feel like this is a friendship that will carry us to future pool parties at penthouses.
I sure hope so.
But okay, so for those out there who don't already know you, what is your background with magic?
Oh man, my background in magic or my background in content creation?
Ooh, both.
Okay, all right. I've been playing Magic for the majority of my life. I've been playing Magic since I was 3 years old.
Whoa.
And I played 60 card most of my life because Commander wasn't that big, obviously, when I started playing. But I remember when I learned about the format Modern, it changed my entire life. And I was so in on this homebrew Esper control deck I made. Because one of my friends vapor snagged me, and I was like, this can never happen again, so I built a deck with no creatures.
I love that.
And then my game store closed, so I took a little bit of a break, and I got really back into Magic for Commander because I went to a CDH tournament in Seattle called Marchesa. Doesn't exist anymore, but it is where I got back into Magic.
Nice.
Then my friends that I met there bullied me into making a Twitter. And
yep. That's the only way that you get onto Twitter, I feel like.
Yeah, truly. My friends that I met there, I did a lot of quote tweeting them and roasting them, and people thought that I was funny, I guess. So I don't know that I can use that same strategy on Threads or Blue Sky, but I'll try.
If you don't follow Maeve on one of those above mentioned social medias, you definitely should, because first of all, you have really cute fairy outfits, which just resonates with me as being a Faerie Conclave person. So yeah, we love that.
That's known for being a queer fairy on the internet.
Yes. Yep. Which when I find another person like that, I'm like, okay, we need to be friends now.
Yeah, for sure.
Nice. Okay, and I am excited to have you on today to talk about one of your favorite decks, which today is a Commander deck, but I do think I'm going to lock away that Esper control deck for later because
for sure.
That sounds really cool, and I love
so silly.
Yeah. I love talking about decks in other formats that were of a certain time. So if it's old standards or old modern metas, that kind of stuff, I think is really interesting.
For sure.
Before I kick things off with the first question, I always give a shout out to one of my patrons at the Conclave Mentor patron level. So today's episode will be dedicated to Lee. Thank you so much, Lee, for being a patron. I really appreciate it. And okay, so Maeve, my first question for you is, who is the commander of the deck that we're going to be talking about, and what inspired you to build it in the first place?
Oh man, I built Tasha the Witch Queen because I love D&D, and especially Tasha has a big place in my heart. But I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it for a while. And then I saw Season of the Witch at like a random comic book store I was at. And I was like, this is the deck. It's this. It's kind of like a combination of like just liking D&D and the character Tasha and this one random reserve list card that makes you attack.
That's awesome. And I did want to say I didn't exactly play against this deck, but I was like spectating you playing this deck. And then one of the other players had to like hop out to use the restroom. So I hopped in and like took their turn for them. So I feel like I kind of played against this deck a little bit. And
yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. And so I love that you built this around Season of the Witch because that was out at the time. And I just remember thinking how cool it was. I really like cards that incentivize you. This one is maybe like a little more than incentive. It's kind of forcing you to attack. But just like cards that kind of get people attacking it are really cool.
Yeah, so it's supposed to be played with No Mercy to create a soft lock, but actually I think at that time I had just played it alone because I love the cards so much and it's really bad for me when I do that.
That's fair. I think I did attack you with some stuff because of it, so
yeah.
That's fair. It's kind of like before Goad existed that kind of protected you a little bit. It was like, oh, you actually can just be getting attacked.
Yeah, you can just hit me, and that's the fun of it. So No Mercy makes it so that if people choose to hit me, their creatures will die regardless. So it's like it's like a big decision you have to make. But you can just hit my opponents, and then everything is fine.
Yeah.
But it's like there's nothing stopping you from hitting me if you have like indestructible or you have protection from. Like, it's truly, like, the most janky goad you've ever seen.
I kind of love that, though. It's like build your own goad that...
Yeah.
But goad does have the downside of when it gets to 1v1, it just doesn't do anything. Whereas these will still have an effect when it gets down to 1v1. So there's something. Nice. Okay, and we did kind of gloss over Tasha, but will you read what she does exactly? Because I am into it.
Tasha is a planeswalker that can be your commander. And whenever you cast a spell you don't own, you make a 3/3 black demon creature token that's like static on her card. Her +1 is draw a card. For each opponent, exile up to one instant or sorcery card from that player's graveyard and put a page counter on it. And her -3 is you can cast a spell from among the cards in exile with page counters without paying their mana cost. So she's pretty cool.
Yeah. I agree. I think it kind of reminds me of Faldorn a little bit, which is like a red-green commander that gives you 2/2 wolves for like casting things from exile. But this is the most like blue-black version of that kind of idea where instead of wolves, you're getting 3/3 black demons, which is cool. Cooler, in my opinion, at least. And then it also gives you the like card draw, you exiling, casting stuff from exile thing. So yeah, nice. That's really cool. And I always forget that Tasha is from D&D originally, just because I see her so much, and she just like feels like a part of Magic now. But I do love that she's from the Baldur's Gate set, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Nice.
I actually don't think she's in the Baldur's Gate video game. I think she's just a Forgotten Realms character, but
that's true. Yeah, I bet if she was like an NPC or something in Baldur's Gate 3, I don't know where I'm going with this. We would see her on TikTok, I guess. Is where my mind went.
Definitely would see her on TikTok.
And I don't know if that's just me, but I get like a lot of Asterian thirst traps on TikTok. So, okay, since you first put this deck together, tell me a little bit about its history. What kinds of things have you done to it since then, and have you kind of learned any lessons?
Yeah, so I'm definitely a tinkerer. Like, I don't build a full deck in paper until I know that the cards are where I want them to be, because this is like my main forever deck. This is the first commander deck I really built and enjoyed. But I was in a Discord that I was an admin for, and a couple people were like, spitballing ideas with me to help me build it, because I knew that I wanted to build it around Season of the Witch, and I knew I wanted it to be Halloween themed, and those two things are like a wild concept for a deck. Like it gives you so many possibilities. So when I first built the deck, we were sitting in this Discord for like 5 hours and someone was like, you should put Divining Witch in it. And I was like, then I'd have to put Thassa's Oracle. I can't do that to people in a casual table. So we decided against that. But it used to have the whole like Bogbrew Witch, Newt.
Oh, yes.
Cauldron combo, but I ended up taking that out for cooler things. But it has a cast of very, very gorgeous, gorgeous girls. They're the witches. Some of them are actually witches, and some of them are Phage the Untouchable, which I added later because I could not close games.
That is fair.
The only problem with Phage is that people don't like it when Phage hits the table. So it's like a very, like, I need to close out this game. I'm going to cast this card. My other notable little doodad is I learned that Displacer Kitten is real nasty with Tasha. It doesn't make, like, the kind of loop that you can just say you're doing and then, like, it's over. It's just a really, like, you blink Tasha with Displacer Kitten, and then you can use her Planeswalker abilities again. So you can create a loop where you're casting spells that you have exiled and making demons, and then you draw the card, cast another spell, and you can do it again. It's really nasty, especially if, like, somebody has Dark Ritual in their graveyard or somebody has a tutor in their graveyard, and you can just keep looking for things that are good. One of my other favorite ones to exile is Frantic Search, because I draw cards and untap lands, and I don't have to pay for it.
Wait, that's really cool.
Yeah. I have, like, most of these creatures have some kind of, like, ability that actually does benefit the deck because it's so light on them. There's only 11. But I have, like, the Sorceress Queen and Combat Witches because you can make something an 0/2 and then work with someone else at the table to kill a creature. There's Novice Occultist, which I felt like fit the theme really well, and when it dies, you draw a card. There's some there's like a little bit of a curse sub-theme.
Yeah.
Some of them help with my curse game.
Which feels right.
Yeah.
We hadn't mentioned the Halloween theme of this deck yet, but I'm obsessed with, like, the witches and the art and, like, all of the cats too.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, there's a lot of familiars.
Yes. Yeah, and the fact that some of them, like Displacer Kitten, you can put together to make combos too. That's really cool.
Yeah. So I got, the classics. Got Ponder, Imperial Seal, Demonic Tutor, some stuff that does removal and counter spells because it is a control deck instead of a mill deck. The only way to mill cards puts them into exile, which is actually really bad for Tasha, but I have to put Tasha's Hideous Laughter, obviously.
Oh, yes, of course.
But it's not a mill deck, and I think that's how a lot of people build Tasha, so when they see it, they think I'm playing a mill deck, and it's really scary for me.
Oh, interesting.
But it's just it's a control deck at heart. It's very heavy on counter spells and removal. I have some spooky witchy guys like Ariet's Tempting Apple. I knew I needed in here when I saw it.
Oh yeah, that is perfect for this.
Jack-o'-lantern. I don't know what Jack-o'-lantern does to help me, but it's really cute and thematic.
Yeah, one thing I love about theme decks like this are when you end up with a deck list where you have, like, Jack-o'-lantern, which is an artifact probably nobody knows or remembers what it does.
Yeah.
Next to, like, Demonic Tutor because or Vampiric Tutor because you have to have you have to have some way to have it function. So I just think that's fun.
Yeah, I definitely have, like, a decent amount of tutors because, first of all, a lot of them are spooky, so they fit the theme.
True.
But also because this deck will not function without them. It's, like, truly held together by the flimsiest binding. Mostly it's, like, an adverse advantage style deck, but it's also a control deck, so some things are really scary and I just don't want to deal with it. It's, like, gross, get that out of here. I like it when you have big scary guys on the board because then you hit each other with them with my No Mercy Season of the Witch combo. And then there's other things that help encourage people to do that, like, I have Curse of Verbosity, so if you attack the opponent that's cursed, you draw a card, and I do too. Um,
I like it.
yeah, unfortunately, a lot of the really good curses are in red.
Oh,
I did what I could.
I like it. A small curse sub theme.
Yeah.
So if you were to like describe just what is it about this deck that brings you joy, is it the theme, or is it something like, it sounds like you are historically a control player, and I see that definitely in this as well, but
I am.
yeah.
It's a little bit of both. It's very much like a me deck. It's very control. It's very spooky. Like the theming is what really makes me happy. Like as long as I play like Season of the Witch or some spooky little guys, everything it's a one game to me. Like it doesn't matter if I've actually lost. I won the game.
Yes.
I also like am really intentional about the art that I chose for each of these cards. So if there's like a witchy spooky art on a card, that's the one that's in here. It's like it gives me a lot of joy to play this thing that I've like crafted so lovingly at a table where like other people can be like, "Oh, this is not what I expected," because it's like that's what makes me happy, really.
Nice. Yeah. And I think that's something that's very special about Commander is like self-expression that you can have in a deck like this is you can still have a deck that functions and is competing with others, but still like feels like it's something that represents yourself. And yeah, and this deck definitely represents the vibes that I have gotten from you. So I love it.
Thank you.
So when you sit down to play it and you're kind of like thinking about the strategy that happens while you're playing this deck, like what are the goals that you have in mind?
My personal goals for my little like if I do these things I've won the game is I want to assemble the Season of the Witch No Mercy combo. Sometimes it doesn't happen. They're both pretty expensive to play, but like some games I can like Dark Ritual and get out Season of the Witch like turn 1, and that's so extremely bad for me, but it makes me happy. Because then people are like, well, now I have to attack, and they just hit me all game, and I'm also losing 2 life every upkeep for having it. So it's just like it's truly the worst. But I also I like to see how many spells I can cast from my opponents. Not for like the demon count or anything, but like if my opponents are doing cool things with their spells, I also want to do those cool things with their spells.
Yep.
So I like doing that with Tasha. I haven't closed a game with Phage yet, and I would love to do that. That's like my personal agenda is I would love to win a game with Phage. People are smart and they remove her though.
Yeah, Phage is definitely one of those cards that when it comes down, it like warps the game around it a little bit.
Yep.
And I say it's in a fun way. I think I love to see it.
Yeah, me too. The games that I play with this deck will drag on for several hours, so I don't want to like just have all this value and like not be able to do anything with it. So that's really why Phage is in there. I hate it when you're just like waiting for someone to finally hit the one thing. And for a while, the only way that I could really win with this deck was like hoping my opponents got each other down pretty low and then swinging in with the demons that I've made. But usually that doesn't work, so I needed something. I actually kind of feel like I still need more because Phage is such a target, but...
Something that helps close it out, but is maybe like slightly less scary, so it's more under the radar.
Yeah.
I get that. One thing I always forget about Tasha is I just assume that the demons have flying, but they don't. They're like D&D-esque ground demons.
I think I need some kind of scary flyer for sure.
Yeah, makes sense. I like it though. I feel like you can get a huge number of demons out.
Yes.
And that is always something that feels good. So I think you've touched on this a little bit, but what would you say are this deck's weaknesses?
Oh man, there's so many. The first one is that when I make No Mercy and Season of the Witch together on the board, like you can't hit me without your things getting blown up, but you can still hit Tasha. So a lot of people do. Especially because it's such a creature-light deck, I usually don't have a lot of blockers. So people just go for Tasha, and I'll have her with, like, 6 command tags, often.
And since she already costs 5, it can get pretty pricey.
The other ones are mostly just that, like, people have preconceived notions when they see a Tasha deck, and because of that, they'll target me pretty heavily. Like, because people think that I'm playing mill, and nobody wants to play against a mill deck. Or, because I don't have any creatures on the board, people are like, well, you're wide open, and they just hit me. But if I had a lot of creatures on the board, I wouldn't be having that much fun. So, you gotta make concessions somewhere.
Yeah. You don't actually care about creatures. You're just like, I just don't want to be getting attacked randomly every turn.
Wow. Yeah.
Makes sense. Those are interesting weaknesses because maybe it's just me and my play group, but we like love having a mill deck around.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's probably because most of us play graveyard decks a lot of the time, so getting milled is very strong for us. It's like a big benefit. I'm usually trying to mill myself anyway as much as I can. So there's that, but also it is interesting to be playing a commander that has kind of a maybe like a salty reputation, but playing it in a different way, because then you have to kind of you have to like include that in your pregame discussion.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes people just don't believe you, and like those are people that are not necessarily fun to play with. So I try to keep my distance, but the rule 0 conversation for Tasha is so important, because when people hear that it's like a quirky Halloween deck, they're like, oh, okay, like I'm interested in letting this see where it goes, but not so much when they think it's a mill deck.
Makes sense. Yeah, for years I played this is kind of before Sagas had a lot of support, but I played an Atraxa Sagas deck from like 2018 to 2021-ish, and it was very similar to that. It was like a janky kind of enchantments saga deck, and Atraxa would proliferate the lore counters. Which, it was like a fun interaction, and it was pretty strong when it got going, but it was like so weak compared to every other Atraxa deck ever. Yeah. So I would sit down and pull out Atraxa, and I would always have a pregame conversation like, it's not every other Atraxa deck you've seen, but then sometimes it would still do really strong stuff, and I would kind of feel bad because Atraxa already is just a huge, scary, flying, life-linking thing that is very impactful. So, yeah, I totally understand the struggle of having a commander with a reputation.
I feel like it has another weakness, and it's a control deck. Control decks are really hard to have in Commander. Because people, like, they either hate blue, they hate control, or, like, it's just not powerful enough to stop all of the things. Like, in 1v1, you only have one person you're playing against, so your control spells are really good. But in Commander, like, oh, you removed my guy, well, now I have a reanimator target, you know, like, it's just not that good.
Yeah, that is interesting, since we're used to, in 60-card formats, there's this kind of like rock, paper, scissors, and between strategies, and control is like one of those important pieces. But in Commander, you're right, it's a lot less strong.
Because you have 4 people that can just like, oh, you stopped this person, well, now this person's gonna go off. It's tough on the threat assessment when you're on like day 4 of a con.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I bet that you get really good at threat assessment in Commander, which is a totally different skill from threat assessment elsewhere. Yeah. But I totally understand that. Sometimes when you are, I mean, we were up until like 3 a.m. some nights playing Commander. You are definitely not making the most like optimal decisions.
No, definitely not.
But I love it though. I mean, clearly you still enjoy playing control in Commander, even if while still acknowledging that it does have weaknesses. We have shouted out like a lot of cool cards in this deck, but are there any other notable cards that you want to talk about that fill kind of like a specific purpose here?
Yeah. We talked about Displacer Kitten, which is like one of the main ones that's really good to have. The only one we haven't really talked about is I have a lot of these curses because of the sub-theme. And a lot of them are really good at stopping some of the main strategies that casual players use in Commander. So, like, green can get really out of control really fast in a way that I can't stop from happening. but like Curse of Restless Dead will make me a zombie creature token every time they play land, every time they ramp. Or Trespasser's Curse makes them lose a life and I gain a life every time a creature enters. So it helps stop like token strategies or like crazy ramping, or there's a card that on their upkeep they reveal a creature card from the top of their deck and I get it under my control. So if they have like big scary stuff, that's really good. And that really helps like kind of make the deck run a little better because control does suck so hard. The curses are like important to helping stunt those people who are like really trying to go off.
I like that. And that was Curse of Unbinding is the one that steals their creatures.
Yes.
I think that's really smart. You have like identified these strategies that you have a hard time keeping up with in this deck, and you have like specific cards to punish those people, which is such a like witch Halloween vibes type of thing to do.
Yeah.
I also wanted to, while we were looking at the enchantment section, I noticed that Oubliette is in this deck.
Oh, yeah, I love Oubliette.
Yeah, that one's, it almost permanently takes out someone's commander if you need to.
Yep.
And I really respect that.
I also have Imprisoned in the Moon and Frogify. Those are like the commander hits.
Yeah, and I think that's important because especially the last year or two, commander decks have become so commander centric that they'll just run away with the game with this incredibly overpowered legendary creature, and if you just hit them with an Oubliette, and then their deck kind of falls apart. Yeah. And that's the risk that people should be taking when they build their whole deck around their commander. So yeah, and it like is at the risk of making some people maybe have less fun, but truly, if you expect to just get away with your game plan every single game, every time you sit down at the table, you're not building fun Magic. Yeah, a huge part of it is the interaction between the decks. Yeah. And I find that some of those super commander-centric decks just are like kind of playing solitaire with themselves until they win. Yep. And these cards kind of like force them to join the other players. And sure. And if I'm playing one of those decks, which to be fair, I have a ton of decks I built that are very centered around the commander. Oh yeah, I do too. So, and that's kind of why I understand it sometimes. Yes, yeah, exactly. But if I'm running away with the game and I get hit with Frogify on my commander, I'm like, yep, that was a good call and you got me, and now I kind of have to figure out what to do from there. So I respect it. I like it. Okay, if you had to pick, which I think I have an idea what this is going to be, but if you had to pick one card to be the MVP of the deck, or like the most synergistic card in this deck, which card would that be? I know what I should say, and I know what my heart says. Let's do both then. I think the real answer is probably Displacer Kitten. Okay, makes sense. Super blanketly powerful card, I feel like. You know, I cast a spell, I untap my mana rock, I have more mana to cast more spells. But with Tasha, like, being able to just cast spells and make demons, and, like, they're all free, so I'm not doing anything about it, is really, really good. And it, like, single-handedly does a lot for me. But in my heart, it's No Mercy and Season of the Witch, even though they're so bad for me. I love it, though. Those are kind of like, you have one side of things that it's the actual reason why you put this deck together. And then the other is like the most synergistic card that helps it all function. So I think it's important to talk about both. I opened Displacer Kitten in a box sealed that I did, and I was like, this card's bad. And now it's like a centerpiece in all of my decks. It really is, because it's 4 mana, which is like kind of a lot to start getting your engine set up, but it really is a 1-card engine. So it is. It does a lot. We hadn't really talked about this too much yet, but I also really like the deck building kind of strategy where you have cards in the 99 that aren't your commander, so the opposite of a commander-centric deck, and then you like build a deck around that or that combination. And I think more people should do that because it is such a challenge compared to here's a commander I like, and now I just kind of have to figure out what cards support that, but I know I'll have this card every game, as opposed to like, well, I'm building this deck around cards in the deck, so I have to find those cards and get them out reliably. I think that's really interesting.
The next deck I want to build is Abzan Food, but I still can't figure out a commander for it, and that's like the thing stopping me. So I think I kind of build backwards for commander.
I like it. Some of my favorite decks I've ever built have been built that way. Like one that I really like is it's based around the Grim Captain's Throne. It's an artifact from the most recent Ixalan set, and it transforms into the Grim Captain, which is a really cool like legendary creature on the back, but it's just an artifact on the front. Yeah, so I had a bunch of deck ideas around this card because it didn't necessarily need to be mono black, but then I ended up picking the mono black Sidisi that tutors for it, so that way I can kind of like roundabout way it's kind of my commander by tutoring for it with my commander. And it's really rewarding when it does work out. And even when I do like get it on the battlefield and flip it over, it's still not that good. But it feels like I won because I put so much work into that, and I like built the deck to function that way. So it's very satisfying when it works out.
Those are my favorite like kinds of deck building. Like, I'm not trying to do anything powerful. I just need to assemble these cards.
Yeah, which it's a very uncommon strategy, especially your Season of the Witch No Mercy. I've literally never heard of anybody playing a commander deck with that in mind before. So
yeah. A lot of people do really love hearing about it, though. Like, especially the people who just love like mono black. It's a really good mono black lock. I was talking to Evan, Dark Pact Cosplay, about it, and they were like, "Oh my god, this is the spice Witch King of Angmar needed."
Yes.
And I love hearing stuff like that too. Like, I love passing along this crazy old tech that I've thrown together.
It's so fun, and that's why I like talking to people about their decks, because then I just get inspired to find stuff like that. Yeah, and I think it's so cool. That's how we communicate. We talk about our card interactions, and then people steal those ideas to use in their decks, and it's really fun. I love it.
That's how decks evolve.
So good. Okay, so this is kind of a funny question for this deck in particular, but do you have any pet cards that you just can't resist playing in this deck? I'm laughing because I'm looking at the like
they're
6 cats.
Cards. Yeah, they're all pet cards.
It's a pet deck, to be fair. Like the whole thing. It is a
pet deck. They're all pet cards, and I can't do much about that. Honestly, Pithing Needle is not usually that good. But when I got into Modern, it was like one of the best cards in the format because you needed it to play against the Jaces. And then for Double Masters, they made this card that looks just like my knee tattoo. So it goes in here, obviously.
Obviously, yeah.
So Moth Pithing Needle specifically is really like, it's not usually that good, but I like need it in here.
Yeah, no, that's like the perfect example of a pet card. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if there were some wild activated abilities that you've been able to block with this card that maybe you wouldn't normally think about if you weren't playing it in Commander.
Yeah, it's so crazy. Because, like, a lot of commanders do have really crazy activated abilities, but you have to also have a Pithing Needle.
Fair.
So it's tough. I also really like Asfertold. A lot of people tell me Asfertold is not that good, but it's, like, you know, you're a witch and you're an oracle and you're telling the prophecy of the crazy shit that's about to go down.
Yeah.
Oh, I really love it.
I always really like the art on As Foretold as well. It's just very simple, but it looks beautiful.
Mm-hmm. I also have in here, some of the lands are crazy. There's Hostile. is just like stupid. I don't think I ever flip it, but it's just like dumb. I love it.
That is a pet card, and I will tell you that I also play Hostile in at least one of my decks.
Yeah.
So I understand.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever been able to flip it though.
Me either. It's really hard.
Yeah.
I guess actually, for those who don't know, we should spread the good word of the Hostile.
Oh yes, of course. It's a land. It's a flip land, but not the kind that you're thinking of. It asks for a colorless, and you pay 1 and tap and sacrifice a creature and put a soul counter on it. If there are 3 or more soul counters on it, you remove them and transform it, and then untap it, and you activate it only as a sorcery. But the backside of it is this crazy card called Creeping In, and when it attacks, you exile a creature from your graveyard, and your opponent loses X life and you gain X life, where X is the creature cards exiled, and you pay forward and it phases out, which once again, really bad. I only have 11 creatures in this deck.
Oh my god, it's so good. It's like there's so many little tweaks they could have made on this card to make it do something, but they're all like turned down, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I just think it's hilarious, and it's on a land too, so it's like there's nothing to lose really. And the thing that kills me is that it's a 3/7 on the other side. Like it should have just been a 7/7 or something.
Why did you pick 3? Like,
so funny.
The hoops I had to jump through for this 3/7.
Right, that wants to attack but doesn't do hardly any damage. I don't know. I just think it's really cute. I love this card. I am hyped about this next question I have for you, which is, what has been one of your favorite in-game moments that you've had while you were playing this deck?
I think the first time I realized how powerful Displacer Kitten was in it, I was sitting at a table with like 2 people that I like was friends with but had never played against the deck, who were like really into CDH and like play high power sometimes, and like someone that I'd literally never met before. And I was like kind of just like doing nothing the whole game, and then I got out Displacer Kitten and Tasha, and I had like a fat stack of exiled cards, so I was just like looping the cast a spell, and one of them had a Dark Ritual, so I would cast all the spells, and then I would uptick and take the Dark Ritual, and then I would cast a spell, and then I would be able to cast Dark Ritual to like keep the loop going. And it was just so crazy. I think I ended up losing too, but it was like this game that just kept going on, and I literally, like, by the time I finished my turn, I had to like run away and go pee because I like took so long. But I had a lot of demons at the end of it.
Those are the kinds of decks I love playing against, where you're like, what are you doing over there? You just kind of are ignoring them because they're not doing anything scary. And then all of a sudden they're like, okay, and then I'm going to cast all these things out of your graveyards and bounce Tasha a bunch of times, get a bunch of demons. Yep. Incredible. A
lot of people liken it to Blue-Black Storm, and Ooh. I think that's the funniest thing I've ever heard.
And it's such
it's a storm term.
Yeah, it's true. And it's kind of the most roundabout way to storm off with this card, but I like it. Like, it works. Yeah, maybe that's your backup plan if you need some win conditions, is some storm payoffs.
Yeah, I get like a blue storm card.
I kind of like that idea, and I also don't like it at the same time. So.
Well, imagine the day that somebody has a grape shot in their graveyard that they didn't win the game. I get to take it.
Oh, okay. That's even better if it's somebody else's storm payoff.
Not even my card.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Okay, so if there are people out there who are interested in building a Halloween-themed, witchy-themed, slight control combo-y type of Tasha deck, what advice would you give to those people?
Just have fun. Truly, that's the only thing you should be trying to do when you play Commander. Especially when you're building a deck that is oftentimes going to lose because it's so cute. You just need to like focus on putting in the cards that make you happy and make your heart sing, and make it so that even though you didn't win, you still won the I had fun game. I think all the decks I build are really tailored to me as a pilot, and I do a lot of really janky shit. But when you're building a deck and you've ripped someone else's deck, you need to be making those changes of all the pet cards that I put in here that are not your pet cards so that you still have a good time.
I totally understand that. I think that's really good advice. I feel similarly. Like, I'll get people asking me about my deck list. Like, can you send me your deck list for this? And I'm like, okay, yes, but also keep in mind that there are at least 15 cards in here that I promise you will not be interested in.
Yeah.
So, nice. Okay. Is there anything else that you want to mention when it comes to your Tasha deck?
I don't think so. It's truly just, it brings me joy every time I play it. Everything from like the art that I put on the cards to doing stupid, crazy, explosive things that the deck was never meant to do. It's just like, I have a sideboard on this Maxfield list, and I guess I should touch on that. The sideboard is cards that I'm either thinking about putting in or cards that I swap in when I'm playing on Spell Table. Because this deck is so interactive with other people's decks that sometimes the cards just don't work on Spell Table. I think I took it out, but originally Praetor's Grasp was in here, and Praetor's Grasp is just a nightmare on Spell Table.
Oh, yeah.
Or Sadistic Sacrament, a nightmare. I put in a set of cards that I can put in when I'm sitting down on Spell Table with friends that make it like, they're still good, but I don't have to deal with the logistics of looking through my opponent's library.
That's a really good idea to have a sideboard for that, because I definitely have some decks that I just can't play on Spell Table. Like, they just are too difficult to function, so they're like in-person decks only. But I really like the idea of having a sideboard to switch out for when you want to play those decks on Spell Table.
It's been very useful.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think having a sideboard for different situations is just something people in Commander should have more often. And I think it would solve a lot of issues with not just like Spell Table, but also power levels or even to just like fit into different strategies.
And my next mission is to make one for a couple of other decks that became less powerful after the bans.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. Okay, keep me updated on that, because I really that's like something I've been thinking about, and my playgroup has kind of talked about it a little bit, but I have not actually done that yet. So nice. Okay. Yeah, and I will have a link to your Tasha deck list in the episode description below. And I do think if you're listening to this, you should go check it out, because like you mentioned, you put a lot of effort into picking art that fits the theme really well. And yeah, just scrolling through the deck list, you can definitely see that. And I think that's a really cool part of this as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
No strategy.
We love it. Yeah, so thank you so much for coming on today and letting me ask you a whole bunch of questions about your Tasha deck, Maeve. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
I'll have links to your content and stuff in the episode description, but will you also just kind of shout out where people can find you?
Yeah, my handle on just about everything is Maeve Fern. Fern spelled Fearne. I guess my first name is hard to spell too, but there's several magic cards with it on it, so you should know.
Yes, that's true.
I'm mostly active on Twitter, but I'm trying to be more active on Threads as well, Threads and Instagram, because I don't really like the direction Twitter is going in.
Fair.
Find me on those things. Yeah. I make stickers sometimes, I guess, on Ko-Fi.
Ooh.
Funny. They're things like I Concede to Goth Girls and Shadow Wizard Money Game.
Yes. Okay, and trust me, you do want those stickers.
You do want those stickers.
Sweet. I love it. Okay. Yes. Thank you so much again for joining me on today's episode. I had a really good time, and I'm just also going to be thinking about that Esper control deck. So maybe we can talk about that offline.
Yes, so.
But yeah, and thank you everybody else out there for listening. I really appreciate it. Also, as we wrap things up, I always shout out all of my patrons at the All That Glitters patron level. So Jeff, Thank you so much for being a patron. I really appreciate it. And I will catch you on the next episode.